How'd you like to rewire your brain and expand your consciousness? This is Robert Manni, host of Guys TV, and this week my special guests are Amit Goswami and Valentina Onisor. We're going to talk about their new books, Quantum Brain and Quantum Spirituality. It's all quantum here on Guys TV. You can also catch me on Guys Radio, my worldwide podcast, and also on KCAA Radio right here in Southern California. Guys TV, Guys Radio. Thanks for your support. Okay, Guys Radio, it's my favorite portion of the show, and that is when I have my very special guests here, and I have a return guest and a guest of the guest, partner that he works with. His name is Dr. Amit Goswami, former professor of physics at the University of Oregon. In 1985, he discovered the solution to the quantum measurement problem and developed a science of experience explicating how consciousness splits into subject and object. I guess that's all about duality. I feel this or that, but we'll get into that. Dr. Goswami developed a theory of reincarnation and integrated conventional and alternative medicine within the new quantum science of health. Among his other discoveries are the quantum theory of the creative process, the theory of quantum evolution, and the theory of quantum economics that extends Adam Smith's capitalism into a workable paradigm for the 21st century. 2009, Dr. Goswami started a movement called the quantum activism. And in 2018, he helped establish quantum activism Vishwalayam, an institution of transformative education based on quantum science and the primacy of consciousness. He's the author of Self-Aware Universe, Physics of the Soul, The Quantum Doctor, God is Not Dead, Quantum Creativity, the Everything Answer book. Dr. Goswami was featured in the movie What the Bleep Do We Know, as well as documentaries Dalai Lama Renaissance and The Quantum Activist. He's a sought-after lecturer, spiritual practitioner who calls himself, what else, but a quantum activist in search of wholeness. So Dr. Goswami is here, as well as Valentina Onisor, MD, and she's a practicing physician specializing in family medicine and integrating systems of alternative medicine, such as acupuncture and Ayurveda, into her practice. She's a pioneer of quantum integrative medicine, a senior yoga and meditation teacher, and a universal consciousness ambassador. Throughout a system of quantum healing, she is inspiring people to achieve enhanced physical and spiritual health. Welcome to Guys Radio, Doctors Amit Goswami and Valentina Onisor. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Wonderful.
Happy that you're here. Hopefully it's time for an interview now that those introductions were so long. Let's start with the new book. It's called The Quantum Brain, and it's really about understanding, rewiring, and optimizing your brain, how you can help tame your brain, rewire it, optimize it. And, we're talking about all this quantum stuff and about what is quantum. And a lot of folks out there, you're not that familiar with it. You've heard the term, but you don't know how to put it to use in your day-to-day life to make your life better. And that's why I have Dr. Goswami and Dr. Onisor here. So let's start at the very beginning. What actually does quantum mean, and why is quantumism, if you will, becoming so important now?
Yes, there is a lot of misconception about the word quantum. The literal meaning is a discrete quantity, and that does not tell you very much. Yes, energy is a discrete quantity, just as matter consists of elementary particles. Energy also consists of discrete quantities called quantum. Okay, but this quanta, or the quantum nature of both matter and energy, is where the surprise is. They are not objects like ordinary objects in space and time that we see. They begin as objects of possibility, to be precise, waves of possibility. And when we measure, then only these waves of possibility becomes the particles of actuality, and that's how the actual universe that we experience is manifest. So in effect, the quantum theory is revolutionizing the Newtonian picture of the world. It's not matter moving in space and time, not that simple. Space and time is just one domain of reality. Beyond that, there is the domain of potentiality, from which all our experience arise, not only material, but also mental, vital, even supramental intuitions. And this is the basis of a new science that is taking place. I have been instrumental in developing it. Valentina has now joined me, and many others. Rupert Sheldrake has contributed, Deepak Chopra. So based on many people's contribution, we now have a solid alternative science, which integrates science and spirituality. So we applied it to the brain, we applied it to how spirituality should be engaged in. And this is what you see in those two books, The Quantum Brain and Quantum Spirituality. In both books, Valentina's role was absolutely instrumental. Not only she gave a medical point of view, but also she's young and therefore did a lot of legwork for me in research.
Okay. Let me get back to the opening. You mentioned something in your description and your bio about the quantum measurement problem. So my understanding, and I'll just take the role of the everyday person out there, because that's what I am. I'm regular guy's guy. So let's say my foot is a size 9. I get that. So what is quantum measurement, and what is the problem?
It's just a name for a measurement. Any observation of an object consists of a quantum measurement. I look at right now I'm looking at the sky, that's a quantum measurement. Because before my looking, the molecules that constitutes the sky, they were not manifest. They were unmanifest potentialities. And then when I look, they become manifest. This causes confusion because the sky is there. Yes, it is there so long as other people are there. It is always manifest more or less, because on Earth, as you know, Earth rotates, so there is always somebody looking. That's not the point. The point is that we think our experience is a continuous experience. It's not. We go into conscious experience, then we go into the unconscious. That's when we are also part of the domain of potentiality. We do not manifest in the manifest experience of somebody else. Until we do, there is no quantum measurement. And therefore, there is no manifest experience in somebody's consciousness.
Okay.
That's the concept.
All right.
And quantum physics is adamant about it. Is the moon there when we are not looking at it? No, the moon is not there when we are not looking at it, not in manifest form. But in unmanifest, it is there, of course.
Got it. Okay. So how did you develop the science of explicating how consciousness splits into subject and object then? So what does this mean? Does consciousness create duality, which is different than unity consciousness?
Yes, consciousness creates a duality by a mechanism that we identified in the brain called tangled hierarchy. Tangled hierarchy is a trap. When consciousness tries to observe through the brain, it gets caught into the trap.
Okay.
And it's a very beautiful arrangement. It's in a way, it's a bit illusory. It's like Escher's picture of drawing hand. Right hand is drawing the left hand is drawing right hand, but of course, Escher is drawing them both. So consciousness is creating the brain at once with both the apparatuses called memory and perception. But the way it appears from the manifest reality is that they are creating each other. And that's what traps us into conscious self. So the brain acquires a self because of this quantum measurement that involves the brain. Without the brain, we do not see.
Okay. So if there is no separation, and these questions go for either of you, so Valentino, I'd love to hear from you also, is there's no separation, is everything within?
Right. There is no separation ultimately. In the unconscious, there is no separation.
Yeah, but then you hear this term, we are one. You see everybody in the so-called spiritual schools, they say we are one. So all that oneness is not like that, so we are not really one unless you actualize it. We call it actualizing that process, in a relationship, for example, we say we are one and we take for granted so many things. Yeah, you say we are one because we are one, at the level of the unconscious, right? And we have all this potential indeed, but if you don't actualize that potential, we are not really in that oneness, you know? So that's something which has to be understood.
Okay.
And this depends on a very important process called correlation or entanglement. Unless we intend to correlate with each other, allow each other into our consciousness, we cannot be one. So oneness is a potentiality. There is a significant difference with old schools, which of course did not have the concept of potentiality, and therefore they could not have given us the proper understanding. And this has caused a lot of misconception that spirituality is talking about something that's hocus pocus, because we don't experience each other as one in manifest reality usually. Unless we love somebody, we don't even feel that I want to include this person in my reckoning. So, you know, that is the confusion of ordinary people. Quantum science is clarifying all that. You have to correlate first, you have to develop a tangle hierarchical relationship before you feel the oneness.
Okay.
And that starts from the subtle level, you know. So when you say quantum, you refer to the subtle level and also to the power of transformation, because usually you see the science, the materialistic science speaks of us as kind of robots, you know, without that power of transformation. So when you hear the word quantum, you go to the subtle and to the power of transformation, power to actualize that oneness, that potential that we have, you know, at all the levels.
Okay. All right, this is Robert Manni, host of Guys Radio. My very special guests are Dr. Amit Goswami and Valentina Onisor, MDs, and we're talking about their new book, The Quantum Brain, and it's really fascinating stuff, and I'm doing my best to grasp all the concepts here. So let me throw a few more questions at you here. Tell us about the duality of self and its implications. Is separateness learned?
Well, separateness is a natural consequence of how we manifest. So the separateness is as natural as the oneness. The oneness, okay. Separateness hides the oneness, so to speak. And in addition, there is a lot of conditioning that creates a state of consciousness. We call it the ego. There is a lot of centered around me, this one only, myself, and that creates further sense of separateness. So this double whammy, first the separateness of oneness splitting into subject-object, and then further separateness arising from conditioning of the self that arose from the quantum measurement into the brain scientists have measured. It's a half a second of processing that goes on. We call it reflection in the mirror of memory. That's what produces this conditioned ego state, which is much more constricted. And then the separateness is unavoidable. We just do not see it, do not feel it, are not able to think it without a proper worldview. And this has caused all the confusion in history and right now.
Okay, so does form follow the thought of it? Like, and if so, can you just press the stop button and halt the conditioned mind and then choose to create what you want? Does that make sense?
You put a stop button on the conditioned mind that say no to conditioning. That's the opening, and that opening creates the intention that I want to find the one. And there is then the half a second gap, and that we call it pre-conscious. So you went to the pre-conscious. That's what meditation does. You surrender to the process. Surrender is let go of the me-centeredness, and you wait. It's just a waiting game until you relax unobtrusively. You don't even become aware of the precise moment when you relax, but in meditation, everybody relaxes eventually. And that relaxation is the sign that your consciousness has expanded. That expansion is the sign that sometime during the process you fell into the quantum self. Of course, that's just an instant of experience that you didn't directly experience, but the relaxation is the telltale sign that yes, you did encounter the quantum self in the process of meditation.
Yeah, but as you see, people don't really stop, you know? So because of the lack of mental hygiene and lack of attention, these are the first things, like we should learn about these things when we are 3 or 4 years old. because if not, once you get to this information processing, what you see what's happening nowadays, we are so addicted to computers, to the phones, it's just not healthy, at any level. And then you cannot really stop. So you are just destroying yourself, in this way.
How you're both experts in meditation. You meditate quite frequently, I assume. I have amped up my meditation practice. I do every morning. As soon as I wake up, I don't reach for the phone. I get up, I meditate for a half hour. It gets me off to my day to a really good start. What are your tips to everybody about how to best meditate? How long have you been meditating, and what have you gotten out of it?
Valentina, you go.
All right. So again, I want to emphasize that mental hygiene thing, because many people we emphasize in quantum yoga. We developed a system which is called quantum yoga, which it doesn't contain only yoga practices, right? But it contains a lifestyle and even more, So we refer to stages of transformation. But again, it's truly important to understand that mental hygiene requirement, because we forget about, we kind of accumulate at the mental level a lot of chaos, a lot of stuff there, which is garbage, which we need to learn how to put that away. And a very easy method to start with would be simply take 10 minutes for yourself. As you said, you wake up in the morning, not jumping on your phone, right? So you simply wake up and breathe, and then you sit by the back, with the back straight, and simply move all your attention to your breathing, like kind of give yourself what you deserve. You start with yourself, not with your worries, not with your problems. You don't jump to the computer to see what are my next tasks, all that, because you're wasting a lot. Like it's very important how you start your day, how you're ending your day, and of course also what is in between. But at least in these 2 moments, it's very important to create that kind of gap where you are filling yourself with that presence. And you get to that very easily by paying attention to breathing, because breathing is happening only in the now. Breathing connects you to the body also. We are so much in our brains, as you know, in the minds, in this monkey mind kind of. But when you connect yourself to the body, and then you can even see what's happening in memory. You can scan yourself a little bit. But again, the simplest things to start with, it would be to just pay attention to your breathing. Let's say for 10 minutes, relax consciously, your shoulders, your belly, move your attention only to the breathing without influencing it at all. Yeah, in and out. And whenever mind comes in, you don't fight with that, because it's a monkey, it will just throw things at you. So simply get back immediately to that witnessing of the breathing. And even that will create something amazing. And after some time, you may even get into what Amit called like this touching a little bit the self-experience, as you're able to surrender to this process. So that would be a beginning, let's say. But there's a lot to explain about the mechanism of meditation. And also, if you want to think of quantum healing, we didn't mention that now here, but learning how to meditate and how to bring yourself in a state of deep relaxation is essential also for quantum healing. Speaking about those leaps, you cannot get into that without that state of incubation. So learning to relax, in the same time learning how to focus, is part of what we'll talk later about, this do be. So learning to be in that state, kind of.
When you're meditating, and a lot of people I think run into this, where they, the monkey mind it keeps going, and it's I call it kind of sorting laundry. A lot of times when people are meditating, they're not really getting to that really blank space that they want to get to. And so when I feel like I'm there when I'm meditating, I will ask Spirit, I'll say, what do I need to know today? And then I wait for an answer. And I have found over time that initially I was thinking I was talking to myself and telling myself what I wanted to hear. And now I feel that by just trusting the process, that I'm getting the information that is being channeled to me from Spirit, from the universal consciousness. How can people make that leap to go from doubting themselves and thinking that they are just talking to themselves to kind of knowing that they are getting information in that's helpful to them?
Yeah, let me start with that. Let me start, because it refers to, again, so when you want to learn to meditate, after you have a capacity of concentration, first of all, so it's concentration meditation, then this kind of concentration awareness that you're talking about. But then you start applying the creative process. And again, they start with inspiration. That's why you need to start your day with something which is waking your heart, a little bit. It's taking you to a state of expansion. And then you put your intent. So, and that intent, that's a little bit of the trick, which you're not told in the movie, The Secret, actually, how to get to the science of manifestation. Right. But you're putting that intent, which needs to be very pure. And it has to be that you really, really want that, And the more that is intent with your dharma, with your archetype, the better it has the chance to really take you far. And then you will get what this message is even in your dreams. But you need to work with that very consciously and perseverantly, It's not just once. But then the more you align your life in this way with your dharma and the archetypes, the better the chances to really be in that flow and get all this message, all these synchronicities, which are signs that you're very close to where you need to be.
When you mentioned dharma and please, Dr. Goswami, go ahead.
That it is a question of allowing the fact that we don't receive information only from the physical world as material stimulus that we sense, but we also receive direct messages from consciousness itself in the form of intuition. This is an experience which is extrasensory. It does not come from physical. It comes from consciousness directly. It's non-local. And we have to be a little sensitive. And this is why Valentina is emphasizing this mental cleansing, this emotional cleansing that we need to do. So even conventional scientists are recognizing it. They call it pruning the brain. Pruning the brain is exactly the process. The brain is the culprit. If we allow the Newtonian brain to take over, the conditioned brain, then brain will throw at us all the garbage that is in our mind, that is in our unconscious, and we have lost control. But if we are aware, like we discovered, if you relax, then what happens is that you are focusing your intention, just as Valentina said, and that intention brings about this sensitivity to intuition. They are coming always, but we are not sensitive to it. But when we relax, when we surrender, then we become sensitive and we can hear the voice that is coming from extrasensory dimension.
Perfect. Okay, Guys Radio, my special guests are Amit Goswami and Valentina Onisor, PhD for Amit and MD for Valentina. We're talking about the new book, The Quantum Brain. This is the second book they've done together. Dr. Goswami, you just mentioned the brain. So is the brain, how does the brain work? And is it merely a processor, or what is it actually?
Go ahead, Valentina.
What? He was asking you.
It's okay. It's
asking both of us. Anyway, I'll go since you're waiting. All right. So, yeah, brain is an instrument in which there's a lot of ready-made circuit. Universe is preparing us through a whole bunch of evolutionary process, 3.8 billion years. It was the same us that one cell initially proliferated into life as we see it now, and now us with a brain with a tremendous amount of complexity. So there's a lot of conditioning, conditioned software. Let's think in terms of brain being a computer. So the brain's physical stuff is the brain hardware, and then consciousness puts software in it. So, and software, using the software is through the intermediary of the mind and through the intermediary of our feelings. And this part of the software is the universal software that we all are born with. This is the brain. So if you allow the brain and not interfere with your consciousness, as a child is capable of, but sociocultural conditioning is telling, no, you have to grow up only this way. So the conditioning is reinforced. And then what happens is that the yes child develops a personal software too, in addition to the universal common software. But that personal software by sociocultural conditioning becomes more or less the same as others, as you know. And when you grew up in the American culture and you had to shake off that cultural conditioning, right? And so that is the thing, saying no to conditioning. I have to realize that I have a Newtonian brain, conditioned brain with a lot of conditioned software that partly given to me and partly I built because of sociocultural conditioning. I didn't know any better. My parents didn't know any better. And now I will shake them because a new worldview has come. It is telling us that there is a quantum brain beyond that Newtonian brain. I'll discover it and I'll take charge. That's the process. And then, of course, the process takes time. And this is where Valentina's work comes in, quantum yoga. We have to do that, and we have to be patient. It starts with meditation, just as you did, just as I did, just as Valentina did. All of us started with meditation. Unless you slow down the brain cannot be controlled. So to get control over the brain is the primary objective initially. And once we slow down the brain by meditating, and this process takes roughly about 2 to 3 months, not very long, then we can go deeper into the process, and that's where things become interesting. Because now we will encounter our me-centeredness, the fact that we make every relationship transactional instead of what it could be, and things change. The world becomes re-enchanted once again. That enchantment is what we are missing, but as poets know, as Einstein knew, as the great spiritual teachers all knew, the world is not like that. It is underneath very connected, very wonderful, very consciousness expanding, and ordinary people just miss out because of this socio-cultural overall mesmerizing conditioning.
Yeah, but you will find, you will find a lot of information about neuroanatomy also, about the brain. So you'll find with the hardware they are described, and also about the negative emotional brain circuits. You have to become aware of those. And then we describe very well in the book where they are located in the brain and what to do about that, what is with the base level human condition, because unless you see that, you cannot, you have to start from somewhere, you know, you cannot skip these things. That's what I'm saying.
So how does memory play a role in this? Because people are so driven by their memories and their kind of agreements to the definition of what things are and what they should be all about, and, you know, make America great again and all that stuff about going back. And it seems like people are more and more resistant to change and opening up. How can we kind of rewire our brains and manage our memories so they don't take over our ability to be present?
Yeah, this is basic. Memory is what produces conditioning. On the other hand, memory is what makes us. So it's very tricky thing to control memory. We don't want to eliminate them because they are what gives us intelligence, the ability of sorting out things. We have to depend on memory. However, you know, this is why Valentina, from the beginning, you remember, she's emphasizing this information processing. The memory is cluttered memory, cluttered for unnecessary things that does not help my intelligence. I have no need to know what the brass size of Jennifer Aniston is, right? That's absolutely no need for me. But that information becomes a primary interest, and similar other information, that's what clutters up the brain, that's the mental hygiene. We have to lessen that part, right? So this is why Valentina's work is so important, quantum yoga. It takes a lot of time and effort to prune the brain of those unnecessary information.
Tell us about the quantum yoga, Valentina.
Again, it refers to two stages of transformation, as I said, and it refers to learning how to live in a state of expansion of consciousness, right? And again, we start with that, with learning about all this quantum brain, about all the potential that we have, becoming aware of what is, again, I emphasize over and over. And you asked about the memory and going towards, from information processing towards meaning processing. So again, that's what we do in quantum yoga. We emphasize a lot this part of the archetypes, you know, and we speak about them. We have these 9 major archetypes: truth, love, beauty, justice, abundance, power, goodness, wholeness, and the self. And we talk about, even you asked in the beginning about the quantum spirituality book, also there we emphasize this. And again, we think of the brain as that having the capacity of making direct representations of the meaning that we think, brain, mind, memory. But the brain, again, does not have the capacity to make direct representation of the archetypes that we intuit. So again, I just mentioned the archetypes, this higher thinking, higher feeling. It's kind of, you can call them divine attributes. So again, it has to be something which is expanding you, which warms your heart, which allows you to feel expanded, which means that from the ego constricted state of consciousness, which is like rigid, constricted, you feel very clearly when it's constricted, and when you start to expand, you start feeling more free, you manifest more spontaneous eventually. Yeah? So again, we first make representations of the intuition experiences of the archetypes with thinking or feeling, and simultaneously we follow up with representing them in our brain and body also. We are living our archetypal experiences. So this is the beginning. So a lot about how to get towards intuition, towards putting in practice the creative process with stages from wherever we are. And again, it implies not only what we know about yoga postures, but also from other traditions and stages, yes.
Okay. You mentioned in the book, Dr. Goswami, karma. What is the role of karma in this narrative?
Yeah, this is a major thing that neuroscientists are also getting the hint. The clue is that if we are all conditioned under the same sociocultural environment, then why are people so different? They are different, actually. You know, you were different, face it. Otherwise, you would not be what you are today. I was different, Valentina was different. All of us is different. Some of us more different than others. This is the clue. This shows up in the brain because brain doesn't learn at the same rate or the same thing at all the same time. The education is tremendously flawed when we force all kids to learn at the same pace, to learn at the same things. They have to all be in the first grade, you learn this, second grade, you learn this. And brain does not cooperate with that. Brain has a different agenda. Brain, for some people, the mathematical genius will express itself much later. Girls, for example, usually, and others, it will express much sooner. But if we force people who are not ready for math early in math, then of course they will not do so well. They will not be interested because they don't have the propensity. This is where karma comes in. So karma is how people have lived their previous life. Usually, again, the socio-cultural conditioning dictates a lot. As you know, in the American culture or world all over, girls are not encouraged in mathematics, so naturally they will not have much mathematical propensity. So naturally, whatever little they have, they are going to manifest it later, not immediately, because they will not be interested immediately. And this shows up in the difference between boys and girls. Girls never recover, usually. This is why we see so very few girls interested in mathematics or science. But this is a tragedy. We are wasting 50% of our population in doing something that is very worthwhile to participate in. So not to do this is to learn about reincarnation, see that there is data, there always has been tremendous amount of data, and now there's an explanation. Quantum science is one of its biggest achievements is that it gives a complete explanation of reincarnation as the non-local memory propagation of things that we learn. Things that we learn are not stored in the brain alone, but stored in akasha, outside of space and time. That's a Sanskrit word. This concept was proposed thousands of years ago, and it was very difficult to unfold it, to develop a science to show that it can be that way. And now we have the science, and we have shown, yes, it is that way. Indeed, the learned propensities, the things that we learned to do, I learned that, I was able to process in the scientific way. Those things become part of my non-local memory that is available not only to me, but over space and time, to my past incarnations, and also will be future incarnations.
Okay,
So,
Guys Radio, Robert Manni, host. My special guests are Amit Goswami, PhD, Valentina Onisor, MD. We just talked about the book Quantum Brain. I want to take a 1 second break, or maybe 5 second break, because I have to do something technical here. But then let's move to quantum spirituality real quick. So hang on 1 second. Okay, I am back. I had to fix the equipment there. Thank you. Okay, quantum spirituality. This is the first book you two wrote together. What does that mean? What is quantum spirituality?
you go, Valentina.
It's about the fact that science and spirituality have been split for so much time, and this split is really painful, and you can see it reflected in our beings as well, So the split between science and spirituality, all these other paradoxes, which appear because of that, it's kind of the science, the science people which are into science, they are in a certain way. The people which are into spirituality, they are in another way. And both of them, they are thinking of the other as being insignificant, right? And the quantum science is really the bridge between these two. So that's why it's really, really essential. It's kind of, when we get to the point that both science and spirituality will start truly following and loving the truth as an archetype, then again, this bridge can be there, So that's the beauty and the necessity of these times to bring the quantum science in picture, okay? Quantum spirituality, so it's not developing another kind of science, and another kind of spirituality as well, So it's not out of the dogmas, which we find in both systems.
Okay, you mentioned vital energy. Go ahead, Dr. Goswami, go ahead.
In concrete terms, what Valentina is saying is that the spiritual traditions, because they could not understand the world, they denigrated the world. To understand the world, it takes science. Whereas the scientific tradition now cannot understand spirituality because science by necessity partially, but only partially, leads to a very focused, constricted consciousness. So most scientists suffer from a very, very constricted ego. They have never experienced themselves as part of the world like Einstein did or Newton did. And that is not an exaggeration. It is really the truth. I have been to many, many, many scientific conferences, always find this tremendous problem that they are very narrow-minded. This is why for scientists it's so difficult to find a woman to date. Because what is there to date? They are only going to talk about their science, their work. So, this problem is a huge, huge problem, this constricted consciousness. So scientists do not understand spirituality, scientists do not understand consciousness because they experience consciousness as an object. And they really think that consciousness can be understood as an object, material being phenomena. And that causes enormous, enormous difficulty in overcoming that resistance. So, but you talk about expansion of consciousness. I don't experience it that way. And then they rationalize, that's the other part of science, rational mind. And rationalization also closes us to, where the openness is much easier to experience, our heart, in our body, in our feelings. But most scientists exclude those completely. They're super, super, super suppressor of emotions. So the double whammy, constricted mental and then constricted feeling, this kills them. And spiritual traditions have the same problem until recently, because they too thought that the world world is the problem, world is illusory, so don't bother about the world at all. Not realizing that they themselves need to be supported by the world. We live in a community. That's the nature of the human being. You cannot just go to Himalaya and expect the rest of the world to go on if everybody went to Himalaya. So it's not possible. But they completely ignored this. So what has happened is that very small fraction of people really went to spirituality. And the result has been this tremendous polarization of science and religion. And now we are finally bridging it. So that bridge is quantum spiritual.
Now, you mentioned in the book that spiritual traditions never mention creativity. Is there a special feature of quantum spirituality that is creativity?
Yeah, the spirituality is the basis, and this is why quantum yoga can be explained very briefly as the traditional exercises with the new process, quantum process of creativity brought in, quantum process of intention making brought in, and that makes the spiritual process a much more practical process. Otherwise, what the spiritual process used to be, meditate, 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 without understanding what you are doing, produced a very small amount of outcome. Only like very few people really got anywhere with just meditating without knowing what they're doing. Mm-hmm. Their goal was only one thing, oneness. And that
so
goal
exactly.
is
the whole idea, and let me just add that. So the whole idea of quantum spirituality is to shift that traditional practice of too much emphasis on the self archetype, like you just go in a cave and you get to self-enlightenment and that's it. So on the self archetype, so it's kind of getting out of the world and ego. And instead, what we do, we focus on any of these archetypes, preferably what is on your dharma, your personal dharma, and then take the quantum leaps and make gradually that shift of character, okay? So eventually it's, we concentrate on the archetype of wholeness, what we call in quantum science, it's kind of the path of Krishna, and which consists of integrating all the dichotomies, universal and archetypal. And we speak about asanas, of course, which balance creativity and conditioning, balance the male and female, outer inner balancing, yeah? So.
Okay. Okay, last question. You wrote a book, Dr. Goswami, God is Not Dead. Do you believe in God?
Yes, but the God of my God is not the God of the popular imagination, a guy sitting on a throne in heaven. No, it's a God of oneness. So the subtle question here is that, okay, how is God related to the oneness? Is oneness and God identical? That is where some debate comes in. For example, in Hindu tradition, God and oneness are, one agrees that they're kind of different. And the difference is that oneness is kind of aloof, whereas God is much more close to us. So spirit is the better name for God in this sense. Okay. We call it quantum self. That is the personal God that we have, God within. A great philosopher named Dubo said God within, and that's a very good. Jesus differentiated it in a different way. God the Father, and then Holy Spirit. That's the God within. Now that's where we concentrate as the God that we can call personal God. And that is much more valuable than God the Father. God the Father is the ultimate ground of being. Agreed, we are all God the Father's children in that sense. But Father, like all fathers, are aloof, and God within is the God the Mother, and that's a good thing.
Valentina, what would you like to add to this?
Totally the same as Amit, and we're totally on the same page. And we discovered this in different traditions because we went that deep into study of the Hindu tradition as well the Tibetan tradition. So they all, and even the Christian tradition. I was born in the Christian tradition in this life, and there's truly no contradiction there, And it's again funny between the traditions how they can fight with each other and not get to this agreement. And for me, most of all, God is love, And what to say, the point is that we need to learn that we can get close to what God is, by, again, assuming a life of responsibility and eventually, again, coming here to embody all these divine attributes, all that we call archetypes, that's how I see that we can come closer.
Beautiful. Okay. Dr. Amit Goswami, PhD, Valentina Onisor, MD, the two books, Quantum Brain, Quantum Spirituality. Where can people find out more about you two, the work you're doing, your website, whatever you want to tell us?
I think you can go to amitgoswami.org, And there you will see also information about the last year's project, which we are very happy about, that we have a master and PhD program, which now today, actually, we have the first batch of master students which graduated. So we are very happy for that. And we move further with the PhD classes and everything. And so we are blossoming in that way.
Okay, I want to say thank you to both of you, and particularly Dr. Goswami. I want to tell everybody that when I had two robotic surgeries on my kidneys 7 years ago, and afterwards I was mentioning it offline to Dr. Goswami, and he said, "Oh, you need to find out what's the cause of that. Kind of, you have to get your your insides kind of taken a look at and clean that up so it doesn't happen again." So he sent me to the New York Innovative Medicine, Dr. Schultz there, and I went there and I went through Ayurvedic protocol, and since then I've gone back and gotten MRIs and all that stuff, and after 5 years they said, "You're good to go. It looks like, you know, in your MRIs and all, like nothing ever happened, and your functionality is better than it's ever been." And here I am 7 years later. So thank you, Dr. Goswami. I really appreciate it. I never forgot that.
Thank you, Robert, for inviting us. It was a great experience.
Wonderful.
All right. I hope to see you again, and God bless you both, and keep doing the great quantum work.
Welcome.
Me too.
Okay.
Please subscribe right here to Guys TV so we can continue to bring you the very best guests, content, and shows. Thanks for your support.